Hola, muchachos. Let's go over how we talk about things that happened in the past. The most common way to do that is by using something called the preterite tense. We can talk about things that just happened, something that happened yesterday, 3 months ago, a year ago, or a billion years ago. Just so long as we're talking about something when it began, or when it ended, or if we're narrating both the beginning and end completely. Sure, I bet that sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook for what we call the simplest and most common of the past tenses, but there are some other past tenses that we'll talk about later that have some different rules. I think probably the best way to demonstrate this is with some examples. Alrighty, let's look at these examples. Carlos began to play the guitar. Imagine he picked up the guitar and strummed the first note. Maria visited us yesterday. Think she came and she went. And usted finished the book last night. You read the last page and slapped the book shut. All right, Carlos began to play the guitar. Comenzó a tocar la guitarra. Maria visited us yesterday. Maria nos visitó ayer. And usted finished the book last night. Terminó el libro anoche. Notice that each conjugated verb ends in O with an accent mark. That accent mark not only changes the meaning, but it changes the pronunciation as well. And here's our conjugations of the verb pintar in the preterite tense. But they're all mixed up. They're out of order. Which one goes with yo? Which one goes with nosotros? Which one goes with ustedes? We can't tell from this. Before we go ahead and put these in our conjugation chart, let's see if we can guess which one does go with tú, which one does go with yo, which one does go with ella, and so on. Hey, there's our old friend Carlos again. He played the guitar a little while ago. Now it looks like he painted a picture last night. Let's see if we can guess how we say he painted from the word bank that we see at the right. Remember we said Carlos tocó la guitarra, tocó ending in O, accent mark. Do you suppose we say he painted? It also ends in O, accent mark? I guess it does. There it goes. Next, nosotros painted the walls at 3. I remember when we used nosotros in the present tense, the conjugated verb ended in mos. Do you suppose it does in the present tense also? Oh, there it goes. Now, I painted the chairs that day. I'm not really sure here. If I was doing a quiz, I'd probably skip this one and come back to it, but I'm guessing accent mark, and I guess I'm right. This next one I'm not so sure I need to guess on. Eos painted the car last week. I remember in the present tense that Eos, the verbs ended in N. You suppose they might end in N again in the preterite tense. Yeah, there it goes. Next one. Suddenly you painted the cakes with sugar. Sounds good. Not really sure about this one. I'm kind of guessing. My best guess, though, is pintaste. And there you go. Tú pintaste. And finally, you guys painted the halls in the school that afternoon. Vosotros pintastes the halls in the school that afternoon. And there you have it. So here's the endings for our conjugation of AR infinitives in the preterite tense. So let's conjugate pintar. Yo pinté. Tú pintaste. Él, ella, usted pintó. Nosotros pintamos. Vosotros pintasteis. And ellos, ellas, ustedes pintaron. Let's go over the conjugation in the preterite tense of some verbs we're already familiar with. Remember, these are ángeles, so we know they follow the rules we've been talking about. Here comes cantar. Can you guess the conjugation in the yo form? And cantamos, just like in the present tense, right? And llamar, same as the other two. Remember these accent marks in the first person and third person singular forms. Llamamos, just like again in the present tense. And there you have it. Okay, let's look at some examples. Maria me llamó ayer. Maria called me yesterday. ¿Hablaste con Enrique anoche? Did you speak with Enrique last night? Las chicas cantaron en el auditorio. The girls sang in the auditorium. Hablamos con la profesora después de las clases. We spoke with the professor after school. And yo canté la Macarena hace una semana. I sang the Macarena a week ago. Let's look at the first one. Maria me llamó ayer. Remember the accent mark in llamó, and we know we're speaking in the preterite tense because we see the word ayer, which means yesterday. Let's look down at the bottom one, yo canté. Again, remember the accent mark. And we know we're speaking in the preterite tense because we see the phrase hace una semana, which means a week ago. Second one, hablaste con Enrique. The word anoche, which means last night, tells us that we're speaking in the preterite tense. And then fourth one down, hablamos. Hablamos con la profesora. We know that hablamos is how we say we are speaking in the present tense, but this time we know it's the past tense because we see después de las clases, or after school, and that means that we need to use the preterite tense. Let's move on to conjugating ER and IR verbs in the preterite tense. And you remember in the present tense that ER and IR verbs were conjugated a little bit differently than AR verbs. The good news here in the preterite, though, is if you know how to conjugate an ER verb, you know how to conjugate an IR verb, and vice versa. So let's go on and look at conjugating comer and abrir next. Before we chart those verbs, let's see what we already know. I'm looking at my word bank and I see abrió, O accent mark, and I remember that that goes in the third person singular, probably next to an L or an ea or a single name. I see Carmen, so suddenly Carmen opened the gift. Then I see abrimos, M-O-S, and I know that that goes with nosotros a lot of times, And down at the bottom, I see a sentence beginning with nosotros. I think I'm going to put abrimos there. We open the windows before doing the task. I remember seeing aste as in tocaste and pintaste, going with two. I wonder if iste as in comiste might go with two. One time you ate 8 hot dogs. Then I remember that I see abrieron ending in N, and that goes with third person plural, such as eos, and sure enough, there it goes again. I'm left with 2, and I remember last time when I had an accent mark in a word, it went with yo. How about doing it again? Yo comí la pizza. I ate the pizza. And that leaves us with como estés, and that goes with vosotros. You guys ate the ice cream yesterday. See, that wasn't so hard, was it? Now let's go and chart these verbs. Remember, ER and IR verbs conjugate the same, so they'll have the same endings. And just like with the AR verbs, remember to use your accent marks in the first and third person singular. And we can use either comer or abrir in our conjugations here. So yo comí, tú abriste, él, ella, usted comió, nosotros abrimos, vosotros comisteis, and ellos, ellas, ustedes abrieron. There you have it. Let's conjugate some verbs I think you already know, but even if you don't, these infinitives are ángeles, so we know they follow the rules. Here comes combatir. Can you do it? Notice, even though it's an IR infinitive, it's the same as correr. And aprender. Can you do it? And since they're ángeles, you could do a whole bunch like those, couldn't you? Let's look at some more examples. Corrimos en el gimnasio ayer. We ran in the gymnasium yesterday. Aprendieron las matemáticas el año pasado. They learned math last year. De repente ella corrió a la dulcería. Suddenly she ran to the candy store. Yo corrí en la playa el verano pasado. I ran in the beach last summer. ¿Aprendiste la lección de español anoche? Did you learn the Spanish lesson last night? Alrighty, in the first one, corrimos, we see ayer, yesterday, telling us it's the preterite. The second one, aprendieron el año pasado, last year, again, the preterite. Third one, de repente, ella corrió. Suddenly, So suddenly she ran. Next one, yo corrí en la playa. El verano pasado, last summer, telling us it's the preterite. And the last one, aprendiste anoche, last night. Again, that's before, that's the preterite. It's time we look at some irregular verbs in the preterite. Here's 3 common ones that we use all the time, starting with dar. There's our little demon in the bottom right corner telling us that these verbs aren't following the rules. Dar kind of looks like an IR conjugation, doesn't it? That's why it's irregular. And who knows where these came from. Some good news here, though, with ear. Check this out. Ir and ser are conjugated the same. So if I say yo fui, I could be saying I went or I was, or ellos fueron, they were or they went. Pretty convenient, huh? And now some examples using these irregular verbs in the preterite. Fuiste a la fiesta el fin de semana pasado? Did you go to the party last weekend? Carlos fue el primero en llegar. Carlos was the first to arrive. Di mi palabra. I gave my word. Le dieron su palabra a la profesora. They gave their word to the professor. Fuimos a la biblioteca ayer. We went to the library yesterday. And there you have it. We'll go over a lot more irregular verbs in the preterite another time. Till then, see ya.